Hey, peace, everyone. This is Omatical, broadcasting to you live and direct from somewhere out here in Central America. Thanks for joining me on another episode of What I Learned by Failing in Comics. Today's episode: what's up with black people in the comic book world? And I'm gonna kind of go in and touch on some subjects. And this is something that I had experienced. Let me just tell you what provoked this. It's something I've been sitting on, and it seems like a lot of people don't want to talk about it, who are whether they're the creators and so forth. So back in 2012, when I was gearing up for my preview comic at Comic-Con, I was working with different artists and illustrators, and I had been mentored by a brother who is in the comic industry, and he's out in LA right now. And he told me that, this crazy thing is, people who know Master Never know that I have about 15 illustrators who've helped me illustrate my graphic novel, right? There's only about 3 of them are so-called black people. Now, that's not a thing. It's not an issue. I wanted different artists. But when I was being mentored, this gentleman who's, I'm not going to mention his name. He's in LA. Like I said, he's a writer, a professional writer. He mentioned that years ago in the comic book space, there was infighting between black comic writers and black comic illustrators, artists, and I had no idea about this. What provoked this conversation, there was something that a gentleman by the name of Eric July, most of you know him, and also a video by a guy who's on Twitter. He has a very good Twitter, the Thinking 64334, just on the subject of comics being fun and without all the infighting. And this brought me back to this issue about something that so when I was on my journey to get my comic book done, and when it was actually done and I went to Comic-Con, I got a lot of shady fucking behavior from black people. They were rude. About 90% of the people who purchased from me at the comic book shows were so-called Caucasian or white people. They come right up like, "Hey, what's this, buddy? Looks like Wu-Tang Clan meets the Matrix. I like it." They just write on it. And they weren't as hell-bent on, they appreciated it for being fun. As I mentioned, Eric July, he's many people know of his successful indie platform, but he's on Twitter, and he mentioned the other day that comics should be fun. And I feel like a lot of that has been lost. But for whatever reason, man, like black comic readers, in my opinion, after I did Comic-Con, I have felt that black comic readers were followers. Now, I won't say this about the blurred space. I feel like the black comic readers who are in the blurred space have their own energy, and they are very much the kind of readers and people, black people who like content, who are more positive. But black comic people, sometimes, man, I feel like they're only gonna like something if it's liked by Caucasians. When I came away from that Comic-Con, I remember thinking to myself, it's almost like I felt like the comic industry was like white music, was a radio station, and it was primarily controlled by white people, and the followers, black people, that maybe that's not a good analogy or metaphor, but basically the black readers, they were going to gravitate toward whatever the Caucasian people like. So if Caucasian people liked X, Y, and Z comic, they're going to like it. But they didn't have the courage to adapt and like something of their or support their own readers. So I thought I was crazy. maybe that year, 2012 or 2013, I went to a black comic book show in Harlem. I was invited, and I presented my comic, and again, supreme disrespect from everyone there. I remember I was treated, I was actually shunned. My comic, it wasn't as good, but I'm just trying to share a story. I didn't sleep with nobody's mama. I wasn't trying to steal nobody's girlfriend. I didn't do no weirdo shit. I was just being disrespected. And the behavior was so foul, man. It was devastating. So that same day, me and my friends, we went to a martial arts show in Harlem. On a humble, we were passing by. We found out I got a text from somebody. So it was like a black martial arts show, and I had my comics with me, and I gave all the black people there the comic, and everyone liked it. They liked it. They were supportive. So it wasn't black people. It's just the black comic readers were very funny style. Now, I will say this: when I was going around New York City and going to different comic book shops, all of the black people who worked in comic book shops were very supportive of me. They were very supportive. Everyone in a comic book shop, regardless of race, Asian, Caucasian, black, or whatever, because I guess it's supporting their business. But all of them were very fantastic. They were like, "Oh, this yours?" And they were very supportive. And so I would say I'm not including them in this conversation. Fast forward to 2015, Larry Stroman, who's a very accomplished comic illustrator, artist, he called out all the bullshit. Right? He called out all the bullshit, and he mentioned that black comic readers would avoid him at shows. And he called them all out, man. He said that, I'll read what he said. He said, for all you now, for those, I think Larry Stroman, he did worked on the Tribe, but he also had done some work for DC and actually had touched, Batman. But he wrote, for all you black people who go to comic shows, comic cons, events at comic stores, who break your necks to avoid every black creator working on an independent or mainstream book, you should be ashamed of yourselves. And a number of black creators at the time had reached out and congratulated him or thanked him. This was a decade ago. Thanked him for it. I think that issue again still exists within comics. I remember there was a brother I had met, because when I went to that Harlem comic book show, I think it was at Hunan bookstore. I forget the name of that bookstore, but it's closed now. But I remember Robert Garrett, because I spoke about the infighting between, while I was making my presentation, I spoke about the infighting that I had heard about between black comic writers and illustrators. And Robert Garrett, rest in peace, he's the brother who made this comic called Galto. He came up to me and said, "I'm glad you mentioned that while talking, because it's something that people don't want to discuss." So I'm just circling the block right now, discussing this, because people who are coming into the comic space as so-called black people, they have to understand that there's an additional layer of bullshit that you got to deal with. There are people out there who just love comics as the industry, or just love it as a creative space, and they'll support you regardless of color. But there are a section of black readers, I feel like, I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is. Again, I think it's because they're followers. And again, I don't include the blurred community, because I feel like the blurred community, I've noticed over the last decade, ironically, they have positioned themselves in social media and in their own spaces where they can kind of give birth to different creators and help different creators thrive. So this is just something. It's not an attack on anyone, man. It's just that this is something that I think would prevent a new comic book reader, or even a creator from going on this journey, man. Because You're gonna get a lot of wavy fucking people. Overall, it don't matter if you know, black or white, but this is just an additional layer of bullshit that you're gonna have to deal with on the journey. All right, peace.